Hello, everyone. Welcome back, if you're American, from Labor Day, to our Jewish colleagues, Shana Tova. I assume that you'll be watching later in that case, and I'm sorry for organizing an event on a high holiday. We thought it was Wednesday, not Tuesday. I was mixed up on that. But anyway, welcome to everyone. This is our 20th event in the ICSVE series of Zoom panel discussions, looking at different issues of terrorism and violent extremism. And we're once again excited to have 125 professionals. Last time I checked, and people were still signing up this morning, signing up for today's event. And it's always so fun to see this global community. We have people from the United States and Europe, of course, signed up, but Tanzania, Malta, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Georgia, Nigeria, Chile, Latvia, the Maldives, and Egypt, as well as many other countries, have signed up, and we're welcoming you all. I think last time I was looking at my notes from last time to write my talk for this time, and I said I hope to come over to Greece, and yes, as to our Greek friends, I did make it, and I really enjoyed it. And Maria was telling me she did the same, that she was in Thessaloniki. I was in Crete, but so nice to visit other people's countries as well. So in our last event, we featured our new work with Marija Allenberg and myself presenting on a project we've named Escape Hate. And that's where we pivoted a bit from looking only at militant jihadists, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, and so on. And we have also started in-depth interviewing white supremacists. And that research is ongoing, and we're getting it up to 50 interviews at this point. So we presented our first research report on that, and a few of the videos we've made, the counter-narrative videos. We also had Jeff Shoup from Beyond Barriers, T.M. Garrett from Change, and both formers from white supremacism and now interventionists, and Daryl Davis, who gave valuable feedback on the research and the insights. And we've now added T.M. Garrett to our staff, and we're very proud about that. He and Molly aren't here today due to Rosh Hashanah, but they're crucial members of the team. So if you missed that event or any of our previous 19 events, we put them all up on our website under events. So it's a recording, and we do record the chat log as well. And we try to answer questions briefly. We can't write you a book on questions posed in the chat. And you will get a chance to interact. And that's one of the things that we like about our seminars, is that we want you to be active in the chat. So you can talk the whole time. You can talk over me, you can talk over Maria, and you can just have a good time interacting in the chat. But then later we will publish that, so be aware of that. And we do also insist that nobody insults others, and Molly gave me the keys to the kingdom. I do know how to throw people out if they do, because it's really important that we understand we're all from different cultures, different religions, and we have to be respectful of each other. So we eject if people insult other people's religion, ethnicity, and so on. Let's see. As far as our recordings, you can also look at our 265 short counter-narrative videos, which feature primarily ISIS and Al-Shabaab insiders, but we have a growing library of white supremacists as well. I think it's 30 interviews so far, short counter-narratives that we've made from the interviews. So you can see all of that on the website. And if I get a second, I will post links to them. And I should also highlight one more time that earlier this year, UN Women published a PCVE manual that has a lot to do with how we use our videos. And you can get that from the web. And we were the authors of that and are very proud of that. And I'll try to post the links, but I'll post them later otherwise. Today we have a very special guest who ICSVE has had the privilege of working with, Marija Mihajloska. I'm gonna just butcher your name, Maria. Say your name for me.
And
yes,
Maria. You can go with Maria MJ and it will be fine.
I should be able to say it with my Russian, but I'm too nervous. Okay, I'm just going to say Maria MJ for right now, but later I will say it correctly. And she is the Executive Secretary of the Interagency Working Group on Reintegration of Foreign Terrorist Fighters for the government of the Republic of North Macedonia. And we also worked with her previous chair, Borja Petrovsky, who's now gone on to a new assignment. Marija is an amazing person, and I think you're going to really enjoy listening to her. And we've had the privilege of working with her a bit to help on her huge task of bringing the people back from Northeast Syria and other places who've been either with or under ISIS. And she's going to speak to us. And she just spoke yesterday to our US military command. So we're lucky to get the latest and best. So let's see, what else do I need to say before I turn the floor over to Marija? Let's see, we do capture all the chat. I always like to thank our sponsors. So our sponsors, past and present, are the US State Department, the European Union, UN Women, Facebook, some private donors, and the state of Qatar. And I always give a very special shout out to the state of Qatar because they're the ones that made it possible to do our Breaking the ISIS brand counter-narrative project. They also made it possible for the travel that we could go to North Macedonia and help out and give our time to do a training there. And same thing right now with North Maldives. So we're very lucky to have that support. With the state of Qatar's support, we've made 271 in-depth video interviews of ISIS defectors, prisoners, and returnees. And from these, we've created over 250 short counter-narratives. Let's see. We're always looking for translators, so anybody who's willing to translate the short scripts of the counter-narrative videos, because we do put them out in 27 different languages. And we did have a Greek volunteer for that, but I lost track of that person and I need you back. So let's see. Okay, as far as today's presentation, I would just like to say when we heard what Marija and her group were doing in North Macedonia, we volunteered ourselves to help, and we have been able to give one training to help the intelligence and social workers and others who are preparing for repatriations to have a good idea of what's going on in Camp Rouge and Camp Al Hol and for the prisoners. What level of radicalization exists among the ones that we've interviewed, and when there's spontaneous de-radicalization, what that looks like, how far it goes, and what to be ready for. And we were able to interview a number of North Macedonians and with their permission, pass their information on. We have done the same with many other countries, and we're starting to expand that in the Balkans with the help of one of our US government officials who's here today. And I don't know if you want me to call you out or not, so I will say nothing other than that. Okay, now I'm going to turn the floor over to Marija Mihajloska, Jankulovska, who was born on September 16, 1984 in Prilep, Republic of, at that time, named Macedonia, right? Or was it named Yugoslavia back then? I'm so careful always with this because I lived in Greece, so I know the tensions on this North Macedonia thing. She has completed her academic degree at the UACS School of Foreign Languages, Department for Business Communication and Correspondence, and as you'll find, she's extremely fluent in English and mastered international relations and diplomacy, and she is a diplomat. I have seen that in action. In 2019, she obtained her professional education in interagency coordination in CVE, CT, at the United States Defense Institute of International Legal Studies in Newport, United States. She's worked 13 years as a government office in the General Secretariat of the Government of the Republic of North Macedonia, Public Relations. She marks professional commitment and dedication to completing serious government multi-agency national and international assignments, projects, and policies. In October 2018, she was deployed in the office of the National CVE CT Committee of the Republic of North Macedonia to act as a focal point for international cooperation and partnership, project management, evaluation, institutional capacity building, negotiating, fundraising, advising, and supporting the national CVE CT coordinators, who recently was Borcha Petrovsky. And I can say I have seen Marija in action in this role, and she is extremely diplomatic, extremely good at keeping all the balls in the air, and aware of how this needs a systems approach, and really good in her systems thinking and bringing everyone to the table to prepare for repatriations. In December 2019, with the decision of the Republic of North Macedonia, Marija was appointed Executive Secretary of the Government Working Group for Reintegration and a member of the expert team. And she, along with this team, has developed the National Plan for Reintegration, which we will be hearing about today, for returning foreign terrorist fighters and their family members, and the standard operative procedures for 22 institutions in charge to implement the National Reintegration Plan of the Republic of North Macedonia. She's a fluent speaker of English, as you will see, Serbian, and uses Spanish and French as well. So I am turning the floor to you, Marija, and you can take as long as you'd like. And people will start putting their questions in chat, and towards the end, it would be nice if we could open the floor so they can ask you questions.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. One big warm regard from beautiful Newport in the United States, where I'm currently for 1 month now for additional capacity building for myself in regards to military support to the civil authorities in CVCT and counter-terrorism. I'm very glad to deliver this presentation for all of you today, because the topic that I'm going to tackle today is very important, at least for my country, but as I know in many other countries within the region of Western Balkans and internationally. I'm very happy that in my country, Republic of North Macedonia, there are rarely cases or policies that can be supported by all the political leadership, both position and opposition, without any objections. And I'm very glad that the reintegration process, the repatriation process at first, and then the policies for reintegration, resocialization, and rehabilitation of foreign terrorist fighters and their families who were settled in the prison camps Al-Hol, Al-Roya, on some other places in Syria and Iraq, and in the prison and in prisons, were agreed to be repatriated in the countries in our country with no serious objections, even though the general public have many questions evolving around the necessity and justification whether we should accept back our nationals who decided to leave the country and go to fight in the battlefields. We still are on the same page and are working together to achieve effective community-based reintegration of our nationals. Now I would share my presentation, and I will elaborate on the multi-agency intervention model for community-based reintegration of returning foreign terrorist fighters and their families in the Republic of North Macedonia. Regarding the phenomenon, I believe that the majority of the participants are very well aware of the specifics of the phenomena. In regard to the North Macedonia, the radical religious militant ideology was predominantly motivating factor for the departure of a significant number of Macedonian nationals to foreign armies. Even though there were many others factors, our estimation said that the radical religious militant ideology was predominantly motivating factor for Macedonian nationals to leave the country. The mobilization of foreign terrorist fighters and their families leaving for Syria and Iraq went through international routes and through support provided by an extensive networks of supporters, and this process reached their peak during the period from 2013 and 2014. We are happy to say that as of 2018, we didn't have marked any attempts for departing the country. In terms of the numbers, around 1,000 foreign terrorist fighters and members of their families come from the region of the Western Balkans, where our country, my country, is represented with a number of around 156 in total foreign terrorist fighters and members of their families who departed. However, after the fall of the caliphate and the losses suffered by terrorist paramilitary formations with regard to their territories and operating capacities, a reversible process occurred in which a significant number of these categories of citizens started to return to their home or to third countries. Macedonia was no exception from this process as well. Even though the UN Security Council resolutions 2178 and 2396 call for assessment, repatriation, prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration of alleged foreign terrorist fighters, including their family members, in accordance with international human rights law, international refugee law, and international humanitarian law, many countries still are practicing their sovereign right and decide whether they would repatriate or they won't repatriate their FTFs. However, Republic of North Macedonia reached this decision on a higher political level to repatriate these 156 Macedonian nationals. There are many concerns that my country faced prior reaching this decision, concerns related to the challenges whether our institutions will be able to gather sufficient legal evidence to support prosecutions of the terrorists. Therefore, the complex process of de-radicalization and reintegration process of the FTFs when they are going to return in their local communities. We took into consideration the serious economic, social security, and other types of risks, with special emphasis of the lack of resources that the country had back then in terms of financial resources, human resources. We lacked well-trained professionals in our institutions that were needed to be prepared to work directly with this category of citizens. There were many questions asked and directed towards the office of the national coordinator and the National CVCT Committee located in the government of the Republic of North Macedonia. One of the questions was why the country need to invest in such a complex program when rarely who believes in individual de-radicalization is possible as a basis for effective reintegration. Why should we repatriate our citizens who might represent a terrorist security threat, not only for our country, but in the broader region? Why should we invest in motivating them to get engaged in government activities and interventions and policies who are costly activities when we have another serious number of other vulnerable groups of citizens who might need additional social, economic, employment, educational, and other type of support. So as we may see, these kind of policies to reintegrate radicalized individuals who've been through a lot during the caliphate in Syria and Iraq, especially their women and children who also been through a lot and passed extensive trauma and other types of setbacks. All these programs require serious approach, serious strategy, serious plan, implementing authority, and of course, funds. So the Office of the National Coordinator for some time, a couple of years ago, started to explore new approaches and new policies. We started in-depth consultations with the international community, political figures, expert figures, international expert community, practitioners, in order to define the proper model that would be suitable for North Macedonia institutional setting. Again, we needed to discuss in deep with the political leadership in regard to supporting such a massive and robust national plan for reintegration, because the investment will happen, but results from the investment are not immediately visible nor easily measurable, and one government might find it very challenging to justify such an investment. Luckily, we have extensive support from our international strategic partners and lots of our international friends and supporters that I will mention later on in my presentation. Another challenge that we as a government faced back in 2014 is that the terrorism or departing to fight for foreign military was not criminalized as a criminal act within the criminal code of the country. So until September 2014, participation in foreign armies haven't been criminalized within this code. We needed to add Article 322A, which criminalizes participation in foreign army, police, paramilitary or para-police formations outside the territory of the Republic of Northern Macedonia, as well as the actions of creating, organizing, recruiting, transporting, equipping, training, or otherwise preparing a person or group to commit the act. Also, this Article 322A criminalizes the provision of finances, funds, material, assets, or equipment intended to be used for committing the act. From this point on, the country was prepared legally to prosecute and convict any repatriated foreign terrorist fighter, active fighter, for whom the institutions have obtained enough evidence, again, in cooperation with our foreign partners. In regard to the way back, how North Macedonian foreign terrorist fighters and their families are finding their way back to Macedonia, they use several ways. They can do this by requesting, and they used to do this by requesting a consular support if they do not have passports or any type of travel documents, especially when it is about children born in Syria or Iraq who are patriots. Also, they move on to use false documents. We have also FTFs who return directly through Turkey with assistance and support provided by the Turkish authorities. They go back through other European destinations, and of course, they also use the organized return by the government support, such as was the latest repatriation operation that we had 1.5 months ago, when we brought the biggest number of Macedonian nationals from Syria. I'm going to speak about this operation later on. I'm not very fond of data, but just for your information, I would just share that we still operate with a official number of 156 foreign terrorist fighters in total, from which 103 are returned, including the repatriated individuals in July 2021. From this number, 37 Macedonian nationals have been killed in the Syrian conflict, from which 36 were men, 1 woman, and 2 children, unfortunately. Of the total number of returnees, 77 are men, 6 women, and 16 children. Again, this number involves the latest repatriated citizens. Only 27 persons have been subject to a criminal justice prosecution. We have a data that we have still 5 active foreign terrorist fighters who are placed outside the country on, and we don't have any data where they exactly are located right now. In terms of repatriation and facing the security threat from the repatriation, but in the same time, repatriation of Macedonian nationals and as the way to provide protection of their human rights. One of the challenge for our office was to reach the balance, or to try to answer the question, how to ensure human rights protection and allow repatriation and reintegration to Macedonian nationals who might represent threat for the national and international security. It's very interesting when we are talking with the non-security institutions and different stakeholders from all over the world. They go a bit mild and moderate in this analysis. to which extent these individuals might represent security threat for North Macedonia. But when we talk with our security and law enforcement and intelligence agencies, we get completely different picture. We get in touch with sensitive data, with sensitive stories, sensitive evidence. So I might share with you that for a serious number of FTFs, our security and intelligence agencies have estimated and evaluated that they have serious military experience. They can act as organizers to conduct terrorist activities. They have the abilities to establish connections with terrorist networks and organizations. They spread and are able to spread propaganda activities online and in person. They could be involved in recruiting and radicalizing other people. Potentially radicalized females could be involved in terrorist activities and support such activities. And potentially radicalized children might possess military training. So because of all these reasons, our security agencies consider them as a serious threat. However, within the National Plan for Reintegration, Resocialization and Rehabilitation, our government has decided to put the emphasis and the accent more on the preventive aspect of working with the foreign terrorist fighters rather than repressive aspect. With my esteemed audience today, I'm very much willing to share a number of developments in the Republic of North Macedonia when it comes to the reintegration policies. As I mentioned, in 2014, we started with amending the criminal code and criminalizing participation in foreign armies, adding the Article 322A. In 2017, the government have decided to establish a specialized body that would be in charge for policy making and coordination of the implementation of the policies related to countering violent extremism, including right-wing extremism that we added from recent in our portfolio, countering terrorism, and reintegration, resocialization, and rehabilitation policies of the foreign terrorist fighters and radicalized individuals. 1 year later, after the National Committee have been established, the first national CV and city strategies of the Republic of North Macedonia were adopted since our independence. 1 year later, when we started the preparation of the repatriation and reintegration policies, the national coordinator assessed that the CV City Committee is representing one robust framework, one robust body where over 22 institutions were involved with 44 members and deputy members, and it was impossible to develop effective national reintegration plan within such a big scope. So as the government decision for the establishment of the committee allow us to create special sub-bodies that would be dedicated with a mandate to pursue certain tasks, we decided to create a specially designated intergovernmental working group on reintegration, resocialization, and rehabilitation that would be in charge to develop national reintegration plan, standard operating procedure, coordinating the institutions that would be in charge to implement national reintegration plan, and that would follow the process of organize and follow the process of repatriation of our citizens and their reintegration back in the society, involving the prosecution period and period of prison detention and serving prison sentence for the FTFs for whom we have obtained enough evidence. So 1 year later, the working group have worked very hard with the support of our international partners. We successfully drafted and developed and adopted the first national reintegration plan by the government of the Republic of Macedonia. A couple of months later, we evaluated that it's necessary for us to enrich the national plan and develop standard operating procedures that are going to provide in detail what each institution is required to do within their institutional scope and legal possibilities in this regard. In 2021, July 17, the Office of the National Coordinator have successfully executed the Operation R, where Republic of North Macedonia successfully repatriated 4 foreign terrorist fighters, 5 women and 14 children who expressed their willingness to be returned in the country on voluntarily basis. This is just one visual provision how the work of the National Committee looked like. For your information. And now I would move on to speak about more in details about the National Reintegration Plan and the standard operating procedures. National Reintegration Plan of the Republic of North Macedonia is the first comprehensive national document that provides guidance for coordination, interagency referral, and individual interventions set of measures in regard to effective prosecution, reintegration, and long-term community-based reintegration of the FTFs and their families. These important documents have been completely designed by national experts and practitioners. This is what makes him very important and valuable, because we use the experience from our practitioners within the institutions. National Reintegration Plan provides description of the ownership of the process of reintegration of FTFs, which is of the government of the Republic of Macedonia. It provides the resources, means of coordination. It defines objectives and fundamentals for establishment of the standard operating procedures. It enlists the key principles of working with the returning FTFs and members of their families. It provides categorization of the target beneficiaries and recommendations how the institutions should work with each one of them. It provides the referral chart, and it also contains action plan with indicators and individual plan for reintegration that we are currently working on. This is the list of the principles on which the National Reintegration Plan is based. Actually, these are the principles that are our guides in direct work of the foreign terrorist fighters. So, of course, human rights-based approach is the lead. Whole of the government approach, because all the relevant institutions within the government, in the central and on the local level, are involved. I'm emphasizing the whole of society approach, and I'm having provided additional chart to elaborate more on the whole of society principle in regard to the effective reintegration of the FTFs, principle of discretion and confidentiality, data protection and classified info protection, the principle of family reunion, the principle of individual approach and treatment, and sustainability, which is very important for us as a government, because in the beginning of the implementation of the plan, we got extensive support in many ways, not only financial, but also expert support from our friends. But however, we needed to make sure as a government that once the support would be gone, we need to make sure that our institutions will be equipped with everything they need in terms of their professional capacity building, their equipment, and funds to be able to continue with the reintegration activities and implement the interventions and measures in the future. This is this huge list of institutions that are directly involved in the reintegration. You will see in the top, we have the representatives of the Office of the President of the Government of the Republic of North Macedonia, Secretary General, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Interior. We have representatives from the security institutions and non-security institutions, such as Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education and Science, Labor and Social Policy, Social Work Center, etc. But what I wanted to share with you is this short chart, which represents whole of society approach that the National CVCT Committee is implementing in our attempt to effectively reintegrate our citizens. So the whole of government approach represents a combination between the security and non-security actors. But National CVCT Committee believe that effective reintegration is impossible if we put the focus only on government institutions on central and local level, taking into consideration that the foreign terrorist fighters are going to be returned in their local communities. For us, it was very important to engage as many relevant stakeholders as possible. So the whole of society approach is represented by an active participation of the non-governmental actors, such as local communities, religious communities, both Islamic religious community, Macedonian Orthodox Church, and the others. Of course, participation of the extremely important non-governmental organizations in the central and in the local level. We also have established a communication and partnership with the media, from whom we are extremely satisfied how they reported during the latest repatriation operation. And of course, we plan to work with influential local individuals, leaders, and role models. I'm emphasizing, now I would shift to the institutions. I'm emphasizing these enlisted institutions such as Ministry of Interior, Public Security Bureau, Counterterrorism Unit, who were one of the key players in the latest repatriation process. Agency of National Security, of course, these two institutions have deployed one of their best professionals, best agents to be directly present on the field and organized our citizens for returning back in the country. Public Prosecution Office, Ministry of Justice, Penitentiary Directorate, Ministry of Foreign Affairs had an extremely important role in preparation of deep notes and processing of the deep notes, while the communication with the Syrian Democratic Forces were in place. This also happened, of course, not without the extensive support by our strategic partners. In regard to the non-security actors, as you can see, I've emphasized the Ministry of Labor and Social Welfare, or more precisely, Center CSW, this is under the Ministry of Labor and Social. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Because I just got information that my internet connection is unstable. So I just wanted to check.
You froze for 1 minute, but you're back.
Okay. Okay, I'm emphasizing the role of central centers for social welfare, which I'm going to describe more later. Within the Ministry of Labor and Social Welfare, we have engaged the employment service agencies because the possible need of the FTFs and their wives and children later on to get an employment if they want. Ministry of Health is also represented by providing basic health care and psychiatrists that are going to be and are already engaged in direct work with the FTFs. Ministry of Education, teachers, school pedagogists, school psychologists, and especially Bureau for Development of Education, who would be in charge to develop special program or approach for the returning children who might have gaps in their educational in their education while we're present in the camps in Syria and Iraq. We have, as our partners, Commission for Relations with the Religious Communities and Groups. Mayors are very well introduced with what will be happening in their local municipalities. So this would be briefly the scope of the whole of society approach that we as a CVCT committee decided to implement. Now I would shift to introduce you who are going to be the key beneficiaries of the government interventions, activities, and measures. So key beneficiaries would be nationals of the Republic of North Macedonia, returning foreign terrorist fighters and their family members who have the status of returnees from the conflict regions. There are several subgroups. First subgroup are the currently imprisoned foreign terrorist fighters for whom de-radicalization and reintegration will be in charge the penitentiary system, where we cooperate with the penitentiary. They have developed their own standard operating procedure for prison de-radicalization, starting from the prisons. Another type of beneficiaries are the FTFs who are released from prison and are currently finished with serving with their prison sentence. Macedonian nationals who departed to the conflict zones before amending the criminal code of the country in 2004 and were not criminally processed upon their return back to the country. Therefore, individuals with unsuccessful attempt to leave the country and join foreign army, and of course, women and children returnees who represent a significant challenge for us as government. National Reintegration Plan, or the returning and reintegration of the FTFs, has a number of phases. Actually, there are 4 phases, with the third one phase divided in 2. First phase is the phase 1, the preparatory phase, and envisages preparatory activities for repatriation of the foreign terrorist fighters and members of their families. These kind of activities are estimated to last around 6 months. We've seen how this looks like in practice prior to the latest repatriation. So what we did in this phase, first of all, established a channel of communication with Syrian Democratic Forces, trying to negotiate to allow us to take our citizens back. We prepared our social workers, our prison officers, our police officers, agents, Intergovernmental Working Group on Reintegration, and other practitioners to get more familiar with the challenge, to get more familiar in terms of their professional capacity building, to get specialized training, how to accept, how to treat, how to work directly with traumatized and possibly radicalized individuals, including women and children. We've been closely working with the Ministry of Health in terms of preparing, negotiating and preparing their system for accepting our citizens and getting the initial basic health checks, initial care. Therefore, with psychiatrists for the psychoevaluation. Also, we negotiated for the testing of DNA for the children for whom, in order to define their identity and whether they are related in real with their mothers or fathers. So preparatory phase activities were very important for us to realize whether we will be ready to provide a green light to accept our nationals back. Of course, here I would mention the negotiations with the Ministry of Defense, who provided some furniture for the facilities. Huge challenge we have faced here in terms of finding a proper facilities where the women and children would be placed for a 2-week quarantine. Luckily, we achieved this with extensive support by the Secretary General of the Government of the Republic of North Macedonia, equipping those facilities with the help of the IOM and with extensive effort by the Center of Social Welfare of City of Skopje, and many other activities go under this preparatory phase 1. Phase 2 is the shortest phase. Actually, these activities happen upon arrival at the border crossing point, where we also needed to prepare a temporary facility for temporary accepting for the health checks. Actually, those were the facilities where the health checks took place, where the initial communication took place, where the initial assessment of the psychological condition of the returnees took place, etc. Now, regarding the third phase, it depends what kind of activities the government would undertake from the type of the citizen that we are returning back. If we are talking about the active fighters for whom we have obtained enough evidence, they are going to be taken, and they were taken directly to the penitentiary facilities in the detention. Whereas for the women and children, they went to 14 days quarantine in the temporary accommodation facility. After the 40 days quarantine finished, women and children were luckily accepted by their families, and they're currently sent back in their family homes. And the latest phase, phase 4, is the phase that I've underlined because it's the longest phase, and I would say maybe the most challenging phase. These are set of activities, interventions, and set of measures that the institutions on the local level need to undertake in the place of residence within the local community where the returning FTFs will be living. Special attention we must pay on the women and children who represent a special social challenge due to the high level of probability of being indoctrinated and radicalized and suffering from trauma and PTSD, as well as due to the impossibility to providing their active participation in combat activities in eventual criminal justice prosecution in their home countries. Children born in conflict zones from another side represent a special category as a result of the difficulty in providing their parentship and citizenship, and of course, because of the trauma that we in person saw they've been through. I'm going to share now what kind of concrete set of individual intervention measures National CVCT Committee through the local multidisciplinary teams is going to undertake. And we hope that this set of measures would be appropriate for effective community-based reintegration. Let me just emphasize that individual reintegration plan that is going to be made for each individual respectfully is going to contain some of these measures based on the individual needs assessment. So each individual is going to be approached separately, is going to be assessed separately. Their needs would be taken into consideration, and based on the needs, appropriate set of measures will be provided by the competent institutions. Legal assistance is going to be provided by the Ministry of Justice through the Registry Office. First focal point, of course, as you can see, Center for Social Welfare, Center for Social Welfare, Center, always First focal point is the Center for Social Welfare, who is making the initial assessment. And after that, the center might help, assist, guide, or obtain fulfill specific request matching the needs of the beneficiary. So Center for Social Welfare is making an assessment whether the FTF have documents or for the identity, or documents for health documents, ID. Here I would mention the proof of citizenship, or proof of attachment to a family, or his mom or dad. We are taking here into consideration the DNA testing to obtain a legal aid also, and registry for the babies that we repatriated and small children. General healthcare have been already provided and will continue to be provided. Again, Center for Social Welfare refers the individual to the family doctor or Ministry in Health in general, specialist based on the need. Psychological assistance and intervention will be provided by the psychiatrists and psychologists, to whom we have extension cooperation with, and we invested a great deal in equipping them with the proper knowledge. They already passed through some basic capacity building and specialized capacity building. Miss Anne Speckhard was one of our key experts, from whom our institutions were extremely satisfied with, and I'm very grateful on the behalf of the National Committee for her contribution. Social care interventions and direct assistance are already being provided. Direct Implementary Center for Social Welfare, with extensive help of our friends of the IOM. Educational set of measures will be implemented in cooperation with the municipal schools, centers for adults education. I'm mentioning centers for adults education because already we have a number of females who expressed willingness to start or finish their education, or to get some vocational education. Not only females, but also we have one former FTF who was released from prison, and he also wanted to obtain a vocational education. Individual intervention measures will be provided in terms of employability in a cooperation with the Employment Service Agency within the Ministry of Labor and Social Welfare. And of course, constant monitoring, evaluation, support, and policy recommendations will be provided directly by the social worker within the Center for Social Welfare Intergovernmental Working Group of Reintegration and the National Committee in general. This is one very important for me chart for your consideration. This is the most important, I would say, unit that is going to be responsible for the effective community-based reintegration. This is a visualization of a local multidisciplinary team and all the relevant institutions who participate in the local multidisciplinary team in charge to provide specific tailor-made interventions to each individual. That's why we place the Center for Social Welfare in the middle, because the key coordinator of the local, on the local level, who would be in charge, is the social worker. And based on his or her assessment, he's going to cooperate and coordinate with the local institutions in order to obtain a specific support in terms of health, education, employment. And also, social worker is in constant cooperation by law with the prison authorities for the FTFs who serve their prison sentence. As I mentioned before, prison authorities are developing, with the support of Council of Europe, their own prison de-radicalization program, their own prison team. They invest in the prison staff in order to start reintegration process within the prison. So in my belief, this is a very good chain, and that's why the National Committee immediately started to cooperate and to enter in this project with the Council of Europe in order to connect prison standard operating procedures with the National Committee standard operating procedures. In autumn, we are going to be working more on connecting joint teams, prison team with the local multidisciplinary team, establish connections between themselves in order to enable more effective flow of information or more effective information sharing on the foreign terrorist fighters who are about to be released from prison and return back in the local community. As you may see here, we have Agency of National Security and Ministry of Interior. We placed them down because we didn't want to emphasize their role of law enforcement, their repressive role, but local multidisciplinary team need to reflect preventive role. So even though they are not emphasized, they're always present. Center for Social Welfare is in a constant communication with the law enforcement and intelligence, and they have effective information sharing because we want everybody to be effectively on the board in order to reach the best possible solution and to define the best possible set of measures that are going to be provided for each individual respectively. Also, within the local multidisciplinary team, on the local level, we are planning to work with the local civil society organizations, religious communities, and of course, cooperating with media in order to sensitize them, in order to take them on our side as a partners. And I can say that so far we had a good cooperation with the media that have been demonstrated in practice through the latest repatriation case, where we didn't face any attempts for sensationalism or fake news spreading, etc. So I can say that we are happy to have the media on our side in this process, but again, we invested also in cooperation with them in building their capacities in this regard. Also, we invested a lot in building capacities of the CSOs and the religious communities. I might share with you that while we were going down on a local level, when we were establishing these local multidisciplinary teams, representatives from the religious communities were almost present everywhere, and their inputs were of extreme significance for us. Let me now share the coordination chain. So all the policies in regard to the central and local reintegration derive from the government of the Republic of Macedonia, the National CVCT Committee, and the Intergovernmental Working Group on Reintegration, who is in charge of policy making, coordination of the institutions in charge, approving on the individual reintegration plan that is drafted by the local multidisciplinary team and sent for approval in the government. We are in charge for resourcing and fundraising and international cooperation. As the CVCT Committee and Intergovernmental Working Group, we have the right, based on the needs, to establish a special mobile team that would go in a local municipalities to serve as a support for the local multidisciplinary team. Mobile team might conduct needs analysis of the work, how the local multidisciplinary team is working. He could be in charge for field presence. He is in charge of field presence upon request. If the local multidisciplinary team requests a presence. And the mobile team could provide expert and operational support to the local multidisciplinary team. But again, the key unit from which the local reintegration process depends mostly from is the local multidisciplinary team, who is in charge to make the individual needs analysis of the returning FTFs and their families, is in charge to draft the individual reintegration plan and send it for approval at the National CVCT Committee. Local multidisciplinary team is in charge to implement the individual reintegration plan and, of course, to monitor, evaluate, and report regularly to the National CVCT Committee. Let me now share with you some figures in terms of how we did so far. From 86 municipalities that North Macedonia have in total, we have 14 vulnerable municipalities in total. Vulnerable means that we have returning foreign terrorist fighters to be placed in 14 municipalities. We have created 7 local multidisciplinary teams. If you ask me why we are having 14 municipalities and only 7 teams, I would answer that this was conditioned with the decentralization of the institutions of our country, because Center for Social Welfare, which is a key institution, does not have its branches in each respective municipality. So we are using one Center for Social Welfare, 1, 2, or 3 social workers to cover FTFs placed in 2 or 3 municipalities that are placed in the region. Same go for some other institutions. So that's why the number is not 14, the number is 7. But so far, this does not affect the success of the work of the local multidisciplinary team. We have engaged a number of around 100 practitioners. Here I would mention agents, police officers, prison staff, psychosocial workers, school teachers, national experts, dedicated to work with 156 returning FTFs in total, but we never know whether all 156 would be willing to go through the reintegration plan, because involvement in the reintegration plan is on voluntarily basis. So it's a massive system. Someone would say North Macedonia have created a massive system for a small number of individuals. However, these individuals are placed in 14 municipalities, and we needed to create as much as possible teams to cover all of them, which conditions replication of the institutional setting. If they were located, let's say, in Skopje or Kumanovo, Tetovo, we might have covered only with 3 teams, but as they are dispersed in many other areas in the country, we needed to extend the number of the teams and to extend the number of practitioners. Our office, with the support of the international community, mostly the US Embassy, Dutch Embassy, UK Embassy, etc., we've managed to conduct basic and advanced capacity building trainings conducted both for the local multidisciplinary teams in terms of familiarization and basics of the phenomenon of countering violent extremism and phenomenon of the caliphate, ISIS, and returning foreign fighters and the challenges they represent. And also we invested in specialized trainings conducted for the practitioners of the teams who work directly with the returning FTFs, such as social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, law enforcement, police officers, members of the Intergovernmental Working Group for Reintegration, members of our partners, some NGOs, etc. This is how one typical coordination meeting looks like. We have here our esteemed representative, the coordinator of the social workers, Ms. Sonia. We have here respected Mr. Sasha from the Counterterrorism Department within the Ministry of Interior, National Coordinator Borce, our esteemed colleagues from the Agency for National Security, Special Units Forces, etc. During this meeting, we've been discussing and evaluating the appropriateness of the facility for 14 days quarantine, whether the conditions would be suitable for the women and children to be placed there, would they be satisfied being placed there, etc. Now, I would like to share with pride details about the latest Operation R. This is the name that I just given to this operation for the purpose of this presentation. It was the operation for repatriation of 14 children, 5 women, and 4 terrorist fighters. It happened on July 7th, 2021. I'm extremely proud of the hard work that we managed within the limited time frame and with the limited resources to successfully conclude within the Office of the National CVCT Committee and the coordinator, especially and with the special dedication of the Reintegration Working Group, the small expert team. I'm especially extremely proud of the 2 agents that our institutions deployed on the field to work hard in risks in order to bring our citizens back. I'm extremely grateful to our strategic partners for their entire support and using their diplomatic channels to assist Macedonian authorities to establish communication with the Syrian Democratic Forces in order to this process to go smooth and without any significant obstacles. So this mission was supported by the North Macedonia strategic partners and other relevant agencies. Again, I would mention IOM here. I'm extremely grateful on behalf of the committee to their extensive support. They are like a part of our team, being present in our office all the time in the preparation activities and on the day of the repatriation. So the headquarters of the team who conducted the operation for the first time were placed and located in the government of the Republic of North Macedonia, not in the Ministry of Interior, not in the Agency of National Security, but within the Ministry of Interior, within our small office of the National CVCT Coordinator. From the audience, people from the audience who were present in our office know what kind of office is this and how limited space we have and with what kind of resources we work. But I'm proud that the headquarters was there, and it was life-changing experience to be part of such an operation. So again, in this operation, we repatriated 4 FTFs, 5 women, 14 children from the camps Al-Hol and Al-Aroy. The very same night, the 4 FTFs were immediately placed in detention, and they're facing prosecution and of course will be imprisoned based on the Article 322A from the Criminal Code. Women and children were placed in 14 days quarantine upon arrival. Currently, they're accepted and live with their families once the quarantine was done. These are just hidden identities of the 4 FTFs. Women from children, I don't feel comfortable sharing their pictures, but let me just now share what kind of activities we conducted. First, we conducted COVID-19 testing from our representatives of the Ministry of Health. This happened at the border crossing. We provided 40 days quarantine. We provided basic and specialized health checks, DNA testing for proving of identity. We provided accommodation. We provided food, clothes, medications, baby supplies, again with the support of the IOM, toys and educational materials initial basic psychosocial support. Interviewing took place during these 14 days, conducted by the social worker, the coordinator of the entire facility. They were given guidance for obtaining legal documents. They were given guidance and support for how the children should continue their education. And government helped in connecting the FTFs with their families. I would emphasize that many of these set of measures occurred while the individuals were placed in 14 days quarantine on a secluded location. For this location and the facility, we have placed one member of the of the intergovernmental working group. It was our esteemed social worker, Sonia, who is the coordinator of all the local multidisciplinary teams, and to whom I send my warm regards if she is still here. I'm sure you all want to hear the stories of the women and children. We are happy that they were willing to share some of their individual stories. They are open to share. They were happy not to be prosecuted because currently we still don't have any evidence on the women. They've been returned back in their families. However, almost all of them are traumatized and frightened, especially the children who are constantly looking for support and comfort at their mothers. They have little or superficial education. So in the last month, the Bureau for Development of Education needed to do an evaluation of the level of their education in order for them to be able to continue their education in their local school. Maybe they would need some additional language courses because not all of them are speaking fluently the official languages. When they arrived, they were malnourished with mild health conditions. However, all of them are hopeful with big expectations in the near future. I'm very happy to say that our authorities give their best, and I'm very confident that we are on a very good path to trust building between the returned citizens of North Macedonia and our institutions. These are just some of the drawings that I had opportunity to see that were made by the children while they were located in 14-day quarantine. This is the camp attempt to present the camp. However, we see devastating images. Let me, at the end, to share with you one letter that one of the girls wrote to our social worker, trying to describe her life in Syria, in the camp, to describe her experience when she arrived back in Macedonia and what are her expectations for the future. I'm going to translate this immediately because this is written in Latin letter in Macedonian. She says, in Syria, I spent a very difficult period from everyday bombarding. Airplanes were bombarding the streets, houses, hospitals, markets, and around our neighbors. We were listening shouts and yelling of the people asking for help. Myself, my mom, and my brother, we were hugging each other, frightened. In the camp in the beginning, I was very worried and I was afraid from the Kurdish soldiers. But in time, the situation got better. We started to go at school, myself and my brother. We got some activities. They opened a kid park, a playground. We got a hospital care, and we were more free to move with my mother. I met friends, and I miss them so much. In Macedonia, we were happy when they told us they're going to bring us back in Macedonia. We had a long flight, and we arrived in one house because of quarantine. In the house, we were given a delicious food. We were given presents, clothes, and every day we are looking forward to go home. For the future, I expect that I'm going to live with my mom and my brother forever in Skopje. I want to have a big apartment with my own room separately from my brother. I want to finish my education for a school teacher, for languages, and a stewardess. I want to have my own phone, computer, and iPad. I want to go sightseeing with my mother and brother all over Macedonia and surrounding countries. I want to take my driving license. So as I said, currently, all these people are placed within their families, and they're expecting a lot. They're having huge expectations from the future. We as a government are going to continue to work and cooperate closely with the local multidisciplinary teams to provide anything that our professionals and practitioners need. We did a lot, but more trainings are needed. More information sharing is needed. Lessons learned exchange, workshops are needed, and polishing out and improving our institutional approach is needed. I expect increased information sharing between the social workers and our law enforcement and intelligence agencies. And I look forward after 6 months to see our progress. I would stop here now. I hope I didn't take longer than I should have. So please.
Thank you, Marija. Thank you, Marija. You did take longer, but it was great. And I'm glad that I didn't ask you to cut off because the last part was so touching. And I have a list of, I think, 12 questions, and we try to stop on time, but I think we'll go just a teeny bit over if you will allow us to.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the first, I just want to say, I think we have Sanam Mohammed here, and I just want to say a thank you, as you already did, to the Syrian Democratic Forces for holding these prisoners and for coordinating to getting them home. And, you know, it's terrible conditions that the kids live in, but at least they're somewhat safe, and they did get home safely. And wow, those pictures are really something. But we have a question from one of our American colleagues. He's asking, did the states such as the US who rescinded citizens and passports from FTFs, so you know the UK, everybody that had dual citizenship, they took their citizenship away. Yeah. So they kind of dumped them on you. We've had one case in the US that's touchy like that. I don't think that we stripped citizenship of anyone that had dual citizenship, though. How did that affect things? And if you could give your answers short, because I have 12 questions for you.
We didn't face so far with the request in regard to the passports or citizenship. We accept our citizens. We didn't reject anyone. If your question was whether we should accept foreign terrorist fighters from other country.
Well, the ones like UK, like let's say.
Yes, I understood. We didn't have received such a request. Once we receive such a request, I'm sure that the government on a higher political level, we need to discuss about this. it's going to be political decision whatsoever.
Okay. And we had a question from Roland Gayani. How do you see radicalization of Albanian-speaking Muslim communities in the EU, and what is Macedonia doing about it? And I already put in the chat that we had already discussed a little bit about that you said sometimes you see people from the Balkans that grew up in Europe bringing it back to the Balkans. But if you could just comment on that a little bit.
I wouldn't emphasize just the Albanians' radicalization, because concretely in our country we have Macedonian national Christians that were converted and been radicalized, and they also represent threats for the national and security on the level of the European Union. So we constantly cooperate with respective countries within the European Union, such as Germany and Austria, where we had some cases related to Macedonian nationals committing or attempted to commit terrorist attacks. As they're their nationals, not Macedonian nationals, so we cannot do anything about it. We simply share as much as the information we have, and we provide all the support to our international partners. We are in charge for the Macedonian nationals only. And in terms of de-radicalization, this is the first national reintegration plan. So before that, we didn't do anything because we didn't have a plan. Now, once we have a plan in place, we will see the results later on. Everything will start from this plan. However, many other projects related to inclusion and promotion of social cohesiveness and respect for the differences are already there, and NGOs are making tremendous success with these programs. And we are also, aside from coordinating 22 government institutions, our office is also in charge to coordinate the work of the NGOs working in the fields of countering violent extremism, countering terrorism and reintegration, right-wing extremism, cyber technology, cyber radicalization, financing of terrorism, and all these CV and city related areas. So many activities were there, but for nationals who are not North Macedonian nationals and who are committing some kind of radicalized or terrorist attack in the European Union, we are not in charge. For Macedonian nationals who might commit terrorist attack in European Union, we constantly cooperate and provide anything that our strategic partners might request.
Thank you. Can you tell us, I remember in the training we talked a lot with the social workers about trauma and about religious aspects and how to work with the religious people. And those pictures that you showed us, I mean, they're just filled with trauma. How are the social workers feeling about their ability now that they're actually dealing with the kids, dealing with PTSD? I know Heidi Ellis was also helping you on that. And can you also tell us what was the decision made for North Macedonia on kids that were born in Raqqa and so on? Because I know in Kazakhstan, they made the decision, I think it was Kazakhstan, to not specify where they were born so it wouldn't haunt them all their lives. What was your decision, and how are the trauma therapists doing?
We had, first let me answer about the babies, the children. The DNA testing have demonstrated that they should be accepted as our citizens. So currently, I assume that the legal procedures are taking place because for 1 month now I'm out of the country, but I expect that in this 1 month the legal procedures are already there. And soon they will obtain their citizenship and their legal documents. In terms of how our social workers feel about working with foreign terrorist fighters, women and children, I'm very confident. I'm very confident that not only with the trainings they had delivered by the experts, but even before the trainings, I was so shocked, positively shocked, to be able to witness of the highly professional approach of our social workers, their dedication, and with adding the specialized training that Dr. Ellis and UN delivered to our social workers, I think they're fully equipped. They're very well prepared. But again, I think that constant cooperation and information exchange and analysis of their professional approach and improving in some regards, maybe their professional approach won't do any harm in the future. So I look forward to our next cooperation, and you will have a chance in person to talk with our social workers and get even more details from the direct work between our social workers and their families. But from what I have seen and witnessed since I've been there 1 month ago, the results are great, and the impression is great, and the way how our social workers were accepted by the families was amazing.
Yeah, I'm hearing too. I'm getting pictures from the family members of everything's great. We're so happy our kids are home, and it's very touching. We had a few questions about how you chose who would be repatriated and if you had any age limit or concerns about kids that were older. And we also had a question from Julia DeSantis of, is there a specific reason why religious communities are not involved in the intervention? And as I understood it, you are involving the amount of these dollars. So if you could just address those two questions, but quickly, because there's still more questions.
Okay. First of all, the government of the Republic of North Macedonia is not making a choice. So we are not the one who are choosing whether to repatriate or whom we should repatriate. Our citizens are returning back in the country upon their own will. So if they express their will, and we started working in organizing them to come in a bigger size in order to save some resources, right? You cannot book a plane for 1 or 2 individuals if you can organize a bigger group to arrive. So once we get a bigger group, we took them all. If someone else expressed a willingness, I'm sure that the government would do anything in our powers to support their return, their arriving back in the country. In terms of the involvement of the religious communities and imams on the local level, yes, not only they are involved, but they are very important, and they are strategic partners of the National Committee in terms of they're very close to some of the families. And we got very sensitive and very important information from the imams and ojas who are working closely with their families. While the families were there, they were talking to them to calm them down, to give them an effort, comfort, to encourage them to stay longer while the country is preparing to repatriate them back. So to be present, simply to say, hang on out there. The government no one would be left behind. So I'm grateful to the religious communities also, but there is one challenge, a huge challenge that I've noticed when we were organizing this workshop between the social workers and religious leaders. I see a gap there, and definitely we need to continue work more in order to religious leaders to try to get closer the religious aspects to the social workers. So this would be one of the priorities for the future, for sure.
I remember that in our training, a little bit of confusion of why would we work with imams? That's not our field. But, our thinking is so colored by our religious beliefs.
That's the whole of society approach, actually, that we reflect through the National Committee.
I hate to ask you one of the hardest questions at the end, but search for common ground. And another one, Azat asked about how are you evaluating? What is your criteria for evaluation? And I think it's so early in the program, you're just learning what you're doing, that I don't know if you're so good at evaluating yet.
We, as a part of the National Reintegration Plan, we have an action plan with indicators. So there is a set of indicators that are going to be followed. And based on those indicators, we will try to evaluate the degree of reintegration. So we are talking about the degree of reintegration, not the degree of de-radicalization, because de-radicalization is a specific, very intimate feeling or phenomena at one individual. So we are going to try to make an attempt to measure the reintegration degree of an individual back in the society.
Last question, Marija. We had we had this famous case in Germany where the prosecutor, who I just loved there, found out that one of the women that they had allowed back, she came rather early back, but she was a part of the ICSVE. She and her husband were responsible for killing a Yazidi slave child. Mm-hmm. But she came back to Germany saying she hated ISIS, blah, blah, and they saw her as a victim. But mm-hmm. later she was bragging, and one of our FBI German speakers picked it up, and they organized a sting with the Germans because she wanted to go back to ISIS. She actually was part of the ICSVE, and she confessed to this guy stupidly that she had been involved in the killing of this Yazidi girl, and now she's being prosecuted. So some of the people have asked, how are you deciding about the women, who they are? Because, people do lie. Yeah, and that's exactly. Really tough. That's really tough. But I don't know if you could give us a quick answer on that, and then we will let you back.
This is one of the reasons why I said in the beginning, women are special category. I just had an opportunity to take a look at the reports that our professional social worker have wrapped up from her interviews with women. We don't have enough evidence, collected enough evidence for the women to be prosecuted. So,
which is usually the case. It's yes. Every country faces this.
However, there were some indications in the reports where the statements of most of these 5 women were look-alike, were very similar. So the social workers are working very closely with them and are constantly monitoring their behavior, their communications, and they're cooperating with the law enforcement and intelligence agency. So even though they're not being prosecuted, believe me, our institutions are out there.
Good. And that's one thing I tell everyone when we're so afraid of repatriation, that our intelligence organizations are good. And we have a lot of these people on the ground anyway in our countries.
Yes.
So,
yes, exactly.
But anyway, Marija, we really thank you for all your hard work. I'm so happy to see these kids brought back, and pictures are really touching. Thank you for sharing those and the letter. I hope this little girl gets a big apartment with a room all to herself instead of a crowded tent that's cold in winter and
social worker. Social worker is in charge for that.
Okay, good. And thank you, Marija, for your work. And you know that we're standing by you, happy to help you anytime. And I think probably a lot of people on this list will love to be in touch with you and maybe offer their help as well. And thank you for your time. I hope
you for having me.
Enjoy Rhode Island a little bit more. I wish you would come down and stay with me. If you change your mind, please do. And thank you for everyone to join and all the good questions and good discussion. And sorry it's short, but I think, everybody's got things they have to do. So thank you, Marija.
Thank you for having me. Regards for everybody. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Safe travels home.
Thanks.